Welcome to this week's Âtrium X Space. Today we'll be discussing the upcoming Cardano Hardfork. So in about 5 or 6 hours, the Cardano Hardfork will initiate and we'll move into the next phase of governance on Cardano. So hello everyone. Hello Nicholas. How are you doing? I was just saying that we'll be moving into the next phase of governance in about 5 to 6 hours. So some people are excited, some people are a bit nervous, some people are curious. For me, I think I'm a bit of all of them actually. So I'm curious what will happen. How do you feel about it, Nicholas?
Yeah, first of all, hi. How are you
Hey.
doing? I hope all is well. Steven,
Hey.
right? You're behind the Atrium account.
Yes, always.
Perfect. No, I'm super excited, and I mean, right? What's gonna happen? I mean, nobody can forecast the future, right? But one thing is for sure, right? That the ADA holders, they're the ones who are now gonna be in charge, and we as a community, it's the end of a long roadmap. I mean, there are probably still a few things that need to be sorted out in that roadmap, but overall, this promise of community governance is now, fulfilled. And you, right, rarely see systems that basically distribute power after they have been set up. So this is one of the most exciting things, I think, in general, is that we finally have this stage of Cardano where we are, in a truly community-led ecosystem where everyone can participate either as an ADA holder directly by delegating to a delegated representative or even signing up as a delegated representative. But I'm probably already, I'm too excited probably. Yeah, I'm just super happy today.
I'm really excited too. 7 years ago is around when I found Cardano. And just the idea back then, we didn't have Shelley, we didn't have stake pools, we didn't have smart contracts, and it just seemed like such a crazy idea that it's almost like it would never happen. Like I wanted to be a part of this idea, I wanted to contribute to it. But in the back of my head, like I knew that this may never happen one day. And here we are on the day where it's happening, and I think it's awesome to be excited. And I think that while we have our struggles sometimes, that it's a day for celebration before we get back to work after the Twitter space. Good to see you, Nicholas and Steven.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Peyton. I'm super excited. Thanks for inviting me as well, Steven.
Of course, always. I think a lot of people are curious what will happen. So a lot of the governance features will soon unlock. And as you mentioned, nobody knows what the future will bring. But maybe we can talk a bit about what the possibilities will be after the hard fork. What will be possible, and what features and voting decisions can we make going forward in about 6 hours.
I'd be super happy to talk about this. And I think where we first need to start is in September of 2024, when we entered the bootstrapping phase of governance with the Chang hard fork, right? So back then, it's already been almost 6 months. we've basically entered this first level of governance, right? The bootstrapping phase. So back then, everything was set into motion basically, and we had some minimal governance features available on Cardano. So after the Chang hard fork, we had the Genesis keys were gone. Basically, they were rendered useless, and we transitioned to a state where we had an interim constitutional committee. We still have it, so we have an interim constitutional committee. There were 3 governance action types that were available, that were anybody who had the required ADA, just like Âtrium, right, was able to submit the governance action. And then we also had also SPOs able to vote on one of this governance action type, and which was the hard fork initiation. So these three governance action types were hard fork, the protocol parameter changes, and then the info action. And the info action, that's a special one, right? There is no on-chain effect. Basically what it does is you can ask a question, you can basically measure community sentiment. And actually, if we think about it, DREPs were also able to vote on the info action. So from that perspective, it was possible since September to really test out these governance features and testing, I mean, actually on mainnet. But what's going to happen in, as you said, in less than 6 hours is the full governance feature set as described in Cardano Improvement Proposal 1694 that will become available. And that means that we will finally have a state and reach this point in Cardano's governance transformation where the DREPs will be able to vote on governance actions that have an on-chain effect. So basically, after the Plomin Hardfork, DREPs can then vote on all the other governance action types plus the info action. So that includes treasury withdrawal, governance actions, parameter changes, everything. Yeah. And then, I mean, another exciting thing that's possible after the hard fork is that we will see all these governance action types available. And then the voting is enabled, not just for the DREPs, but in Cardano, for those that don't know, there's minimum 2 of the 3 governance roles voting on every governance action type. So we will never have a situation where just one group can power through and push through a change. So there's a minimum. It's either the SPOs need to review it as well, or the interim constitutional committee, or the DREP. So 2 of those, and sometimes even all 3 of those roles are required to vote. I mean, just looking at the hard fork initiation, governance action, or also really critical protocol parameter changes. So this is what's going to be possible after the Plomin hard fork. And with that hard fork, we'll also have some new Plutus primitives that will be enabled. That's a bit like, that's not really governance related, but these new Plutus primitives, which have been previously approved via the first protocol parameter change governance action. So we already had this one in the bootstrapping phase. I think it was 2 months ago. And what these new Plutus primitives allow is advanced bitwise operations and some new cryptographic hashing algorithms, which should improve cross-chain compatibility. So with Bitcoin and Ethereum and other blockchains. But please don't ask me more about that.
Well, okay. Is it included in this hard fork as well, on top of the governance?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
It is.
That's really exciting. Yeah, I remember hearing a little bit about this, and I kind of have the same level of understanding. It's going to be good for cross-chain, but that's about as far as I deep as I can dive right now. I tend to learn these things, from people using them, or using them myself. Building some cool product or feature around it is usually how I figure it out. But thank you so much for explaining all of that, Nicholas. That's a great introduction to what's happening right now. With the hard fork coming, I couldn't have done it better myself. How much ADA has been voted yes? Last time I checked, I think it was around 13.66 billion ADA. Delegated ADA voted yes. For the SPO readiness. What is that at now? Does anybody know?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just now on AdaStat. Shout out to AdaStat, but of course you can use any of the amazing community explorers, Cardano Scan, C Explorer, and I'm now currently looking at AdaStat. So in total, when we look at the hard fork initiation governance action for the Plomin hard fork, right, which was ratified in the last epoch, so 5 days ago at the last epoch boundary, and now today it's going to be enacted, because that's also how it works with governance actions. Once they're ratified, it takes one other epoch for them to be enacted. So enacted basically means that the change then is enacted. So in this case today, the protocol major version changes from 9 to 10, and that's the thing about the hard fork, where I mean, on Cardano, right, knock on wood, we hopefully have a very uneventful hard fork thanks to the hard fork combinator event. So it will be just it will just go very smoothly. And going back to your question, Peyton, which is a really good question. So 13.7 billion ADA voted yes on the hard fork initiation governance action from the SPO side. So pools that represent 13.7 billion ADA voted yes, which is 65% approval rating from the SPOs. And that is just, yeah, I did not expect that. I thought it would be way closer, and I'm super excited about the level of participation from the SPOs. And not just that they voted, but also that they so quickly upgraded their nodes to this node version 10.1.4 that, in regards to the vulnerability that was discovered. So huge shout out to the SPO, shout out also to you, Peyton, because you are an SPO, and Steven, you are as well. So thank you to both of you. And thanks to everyone else who is an SPO. Well done, really.
Yeah, actually, I didn't expect that this governance action would pass on the first try. I expected that we wouldn't reach the 50% threshold of stake pool approval in the first try. Actually, I thought we would need like 2 or 3 times. So the Cardano SPO community really stepped up and took up the responsibility that was given to them. So yeah, big shout out to all of the SPOs that voted for, and actually only 60 million voted no for the hard fork event. So the rest of the ADA that is not accounted for did not vote, but only 60 million voted no, and almost 14 billion voted yes. So large support actually for this hard fork. And the same for the Constitutional Committee as well. So all 7 members voted for this hard fork for unlocking the next phase of governance. So yeah, it's also nice to see that all 7 members voted, and that they all voted in favor of the hard fork.
I was actually in Argentina, and it was a similar turnout there. Off the top of my head, I want to say only 3 people voted no on ratifying the Constitution in person in Argentina, and there were delegates from all over the world. It's amazing to see. So Nicholas, how do you see what is the first action that you might think that we'll see on Cardano? I mean, tonight at depending on where you're at, I think it's 5:40 EST, depending on the time of year we're in. But somebody could actually submit some of these governance actions tonight. Where do you see this going, Nicholas?
That's a very good point, Peyton. And exactly, I mean, as soon as the floodgates open, right, you can't close them anymore. So who knows what governance action will be submitted? I can also just, like, when I look back to the Chang hard fork, I was also of the opinion that as soon as we hard fork, we would immediately see a protocol parameter change that would request some changes. But then actually nothing happened, and it was Hosky that submitted changed the hard fork to Hosky governance action, and which was, I think, only 5 or 4 days after the Chang hard fork. So there could be something that's coming in tomorrow, today even. For some, it's tomorrow. For me, it's around 11 p.m. So what I can tell you is that tomorrow there will be a governance action that will be submitted. That is the Constitution update governance action. So the Constitution that was ratified and approved by the delegates in Nairobi and in Buenos Aires, that one will be submitted tomorrow. And why is that? Because in the interim constitution, right, it says there specifically, and so I'm sorry that I'm this kind of person, but in Appendix 2 of the interim constitution, it says that the new approved the constitution must be submitted before 31st of January or until the 31st of January, which means we're right on time. So tomorrow is the 30th of January, which means we're in the timeline. And that is at least the governance action that I'm aware of. But who knows? Maybe someone wants immediately to initiate a treasury withdrawal governance action. But for those people that think about that, I have some unfortunate news, because every treasury withdrawal is considered unconstitutional until we have a net change limit and a budget. But yeah, those are some additional details. What do you think, Peyton? Do you plan to do another governance actions? Because I know you did one as well. How was that experience for you? I'm curious.
I mean, the last one scared the hell out of me, man. I thought I lost 100,000 ADA. we had a couple more planned. Yeah. You know, essentially what happened is the staking key. You know, I created a new wallet. I think it's, you know, good practice in blockchain of when you're doing anything new, you know, just to make a new wallet, you know. So I made the new wallet. I created this governance action and submitted it, and I didn't have my staking key registered. You know, which is what you do when you delegate to a stake pool. You know, you're registering your staking key and saying, I pick this node. And since I didn't have it registered, you know, I thought I just lost the 100K ADA, and I thought, oh, well, it's my fault. I didn't read that little piece. You know, it's a hard day for me. But, you know, somebody fortunately registered it like pretty shortly before the end of the epoch, like, you know, 5 hours. Because Samuel Leathers, who works for IOG and Cardano Node, he was the one that messaged me and said, hey, man, I think you might have lost that ADA. And I'm like, well, if he's saying it, you know, it's gone, you know, but somebody found a way to register it. So, you know, if you are going to submit a governance action, make sure you register your staking key, you know, first and foremost. As far as if we're going to submit one, no, not right away. We don't have anything planned. We did have a couple more planned, but we decided to, you know, hold back on them a little bit. You know, as far as what I think is going to happen, well, you know, the Constitution, for it to be approved, we have to have over 71% of DREPs. Is that correct, Nicholas?
For the Constitution itself, the threshold right now, so if I look at the parameter file, the Conway Genesis file, it's actually 75% of DREP approval that's required to approve this updated Constitution. That's, yeah.
So if you would have asked me a few months ago, I would have thought that reaching 75% of DREP approval would have been a very, you know, monumental task to achieve, you know, but seeing, you know, the readiness for the hard fork, of course, it didn't happen overnight. You know, there were some talks of, you know, doing the hard fork back in December, but, you know, there was a huge turnout of participation, you know, from SPOs. There was a huge turnout of, you know, participation, you know, from the founding entities working with exchanges. And, you know, I think it's looking good. You know, if the Cardano community wants, you know, this Constitution, I think they'll have it. You know, a few months ago, I was worried that, you know, 75% may be too hard. You know, maybe it's too much of a guardrail to get something through. But, you know, seeing how much people do care about this, you know, I think, you know, it'll likely get approved. You know, after that, I think that, you know, once we're trying to decide this net change limit and this budget, you know, it might get, you know, there might be some back and forth there that may limit, you know, the approval of this budget, you know, because I think that, you know, there's a lot of work that has went into, you know, creating this Constitution. You know, you have people from all over the world. There's a lot of back and forth, and, you know, people eventually realize that, you know, not everybody's gonna be happy with the Constitution, but the budget's a bit different, you know. I think there's going to be a lot more, you know, back and forth, you know, about a budget, in my opinion. So, you know, what, you know, in the Constitution, I remember in Argentina, there was a change in the Constitution. It was you know, changing it from there's only going to be one budget for the entire year. And that was changed, the wording was changed to allow, room for multiple budgets moving forward. So I think that one little change there may increase, the ability for a budget to be approved. Because if you think about it, if we were all fighting over one budget, there's, one side of the argument where you could almost say, okay, well, we have to have this budget. I made a tweet earlier about it's ridiculous that we don't have any, presence, a consensus. So, you could argue, well, if we would have approved a budget, we would have had the money to do that, right? So, you'd have a camp of people that are kind of, arguing to approve the budget because we need to spend money, we need to get ourselves out there. And then you'd have another camp of people kind of arguing that, there shouldn't only be one budget. It's, I think the fact that there are multiple budgets allowed now greatly increase the chance of, the budget being approved. Is the Cardano Foundation kind of, what are your guys' thoughts on this? They've been kind of releasing the budget for a while now, and it's kind of changed, as time has gone on. I know that they did a panel in Dubai, about the budget and kind of talked about, how they think, at Intersect it should be spent. And then, you guys also created your own MBO, which I think is called Pragma. Correct me if I'm wrong. And, does Pragma, plan to submit a budget? Are these two entities kind of, working together around this net change limit? Because if it's, there's two large budgets that's being approved, the entities would almost have to work together. But sorry, that was a lot. I'm getting a little excited.
No, all good. I totally understand you. It's a very exciting topic, and I agree with you. The budget discussions, that's going to be a whole different level of discussion, debates, and just back and forth. And I think right now there was already, also to give credit where credit is due, a lot of things have changed with the budget, right? With the proposal that was shared, or the ideas for the budget process that was shared at the Cardano Summit in Dubai in 2024, and also in these various sessions that the budget committee have been hosting, right? So there was really a lot of discussions happening, and feedback was considered. And the biggest improvement for me is really the fact that we are going away from this omnibus budget, as you said, that includes everything, because at the end of the day, even if you agree with, let's say, 95% of what's in there, you would still vote no because there is one tiny thing that you disagree with, and you just say, sorry, but that's a deal breaker for me. And therefore, right, and it's been confirmed in the newsletter of Intersect, in the communications from the budget committee, that there will be 5 separate budget requests, so info actions, right? And just again, taking one step back, the way that things work, right, is we first, as a community, need to agree on a net change limit. And when we have the net change limit, let's assume it's going to be, I don't know, X amount of ADA per year, let's say from January to December. Let's assume, let's say 500 million ADA is the net change limit. So the maximum amount basically that is able to be withdrawn from the Cardano treasury within a given time frame. And once we have that in place, only then is it basically, only then the Constitutional Committee can deem a budget constitutional. I know it's a bit complicated, but the best way to think about it is you first need a net change limit. Once you have that, only then you can agree on a budget. And only once you have a budget, you can actually withdraw things from the treasury. And we're working, so the Cardano Foundation, we're working together with Intersect. We are part of the budget committee. I'm personally an observer on the budget committee. I'm not a voting member, but I'm participating in the meetings. And yeah, we're working together with them, and it's a very productive relationship. And yeah, I'm very excited for the net change limit info actions to be submitted, and then also the budget finally to be released, because I think it's as you said, it's gonna be a lot of back and forth, but we need that. That's the only way we can improve and move forward. And we need to spend also yeah, we need to spend some of the money that we have, right, to push Cardano forward. I totally agree with that. And then I think you also asked about Pragma. So first, right, Pragma is not just CF. It's not our MBO. It's an MBO of 5 different companies, if I remember correctly, and we were just one of those companies that founded it. So that includes Sunday Labs, TX Pipe, Blink Labs, DC Spark, and I think that's it, if I can count correctly. And there, right, Pragma also already shared their budget because they want to. They already shared a budget proposal, and I'm now trying to find it. I think it's on the Cardano forum or somewhere else. They definitely did that.
So will the Pragma budget be incorporated into the Intersect budget, or will it be separated, a separate approval from DREPs and everyone that needs to vote, or will it be taken up into the Intersect budget?
Yeah, when it comes to the details here, I'm not quite sure that all of this has been figured out yet. So what I know is that the Pragma proposal was shared, so you can look at that, you can review that. Everybody can, and I just found it on the forum. I'll also link that, and then you can take a look. But they're in communications with the budget committee, and yeah, everyone is informed. And right, the most important thing with budgets in general and treasury withdrawals is that we as a community need to make sure that we spend, that we don't double spend on things, and we are as resource efficient as possible. Because at the end of the day, right, we only have one treasury, and we should spend the resources intelligently and efficiently.
Yeah, I agree. So I have a question for you and Peyton, both of you, since both of you are DREPs. I'll ask the question: What do you feel is a acceptable net change limit for? Well, I don't know if you can call it 2025, because yeah, we already started 2025. But what would you say? I mean, I'm talking about ballparks, so we don't have to get into like the nitty-gritty details. But what are your opinion, both of you, speaking for yourself, obviously, that you would feel comfortable spending, let's say, in the next year?
So pardon my ignorance, is the net change limit a number of ADA, or is it a percentage net change limit?
Good question, and absolutely absolutely valid. So it's a total amount of ADA. So it's not a ratio or a percentage. It's basically an amount of ADA the max amount of ADA that can be withdrawn in a given time period.
Okay, that makes sense. You know, I was making a lot of posts when ADA was around 30 cents, 35 cents, 40, and I was saying, I don't think that we should spend yet. And we're at $1 now. I think that, if we follow the traditional 4-year cycle, it's a really hard question. I think remaining on the side of being conservative is, the best thing that we can do, but it's also, hard to decide on a net change limit without having the original budget. Because, my first thought is the net change limit should probably be a percentage of the total treasury instead of a, ADA amount. What do you think, Nicholas?
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's the same, right? It would be kind of to have the discussion about the net change limit without actually knowing what's being planned to withdraw in regards to a budget. I think it's and we saw that, right, in the discussions around the net change limit, that the reason it wasn't shared up until now, because there was this whole discussion before Christmas that people should discuss the net change limit. And I think it became very clear that discussing that and just coming up with an arbitrary number it doesn't really benefit anyone. So a net change limit is something that always needs to be considered in together with the budget itself. But what I was thinking about, right, what we can look at, what would be a reasonable amount, is how much ADA, or let's look at how much ADA the treasury gets, or let's predict that you can do some forecasts based on the reserves and the outflows from the reserves. How much ADA are we expecting the treasury to grow in 2025, right? And I think that's around 300, I don't know, 300 something million ADA. Depends, of course, if there's all of a sudden a huge influx in transaction fees, then that number would obviously grow. But if we assume a normal amount of transactions, I think it's around 300 million ADA inflows into the treasury. So that is maybe something, right, that we could look at, that we do it like that. But I also agree with you, Peyton, that we should take into consideration the actual budget. Yeah.
Okay, sorry to put you guys on the spot like that. I was just curious. So one thing that will also happen now is that we'll move from the interim constitutional committee to the, I guess they will be newly voted constitutional committee members, right? Do you know how that will happen, or you know what the plans are on that? Nicholas,
Yeah,
I think you're most informed in that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share more about that, for at least the limited amount of knowledge that I have about that. But as I said right now, or as I said before, we currently have the interim constitutional committee in place, and all of these 7 members, which is the Cardano Atlantic Council, Eastern Cardano Council, Cardano Japan. So these 3 were community elected groups. And then we also have the Intersect one, and Cardano Foundation, Emergo, and IOG. So all of these 7 members have a term length, or their term ends in epoch 580, which is exactly September 1st, 2025. So exactly 1 year after the Cheng Hardfork is when the term of the ICC ends, at least from the current according to the current parameters. And what that means is that we need to have new constitutional committee members in place up until that point, the latest, because if we don't have a constitutional committee in place, we would enter a de facto state of no confidence. And what that means is, you require the constitutional committee to approve governance actions for them to be enacted. And if we don't have a constitutional committee that can vote on anything, that means that we also cannot vote on these actions. That includes parameter changes, that includes treasury withdrawals, and a few others. So one of the key tasks for 2025 is also to elect and find, hopefully, some new constitutional committee members, some community participants, community members that are eager to also contribute to Cardano by being a CC member. It's a difficult job, but a very, very cool one, in my opinion, because you need to leave your own opinion at home or at the front door, and you need to really assess the constitutionality of governance actions. And that, let me tell you something, that's a hard job. So also, I want to really give a shout out to the 3 community councils and the whole constitutional committee. And I'm not clapping on my back, I promise. But really, it takes a lot of time. And so far, they have really done a great job. So shout out to them.
Very soon, the D-reps are going to be putting in a lot of work. If we're going to have an info action, as soon as tomorrow. It's going to be really interesting to see that participation and kind of the discussion that happens from that. And a part of me has almost been thinking that there's a world where some of us disagree on governance, and that disagreement kind of reaches further than just the little circle that is Cardano, right? You know, if you look at other chains, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum, you know, this is the first time anything like this has ever launched at scale, you know, with a community as large as ours, right? So I almost wonder if like some disagreements on governance are going to be, you know, bring in a lot of eyes and attention on us, you know, in a good way, because, you know, I don't think decentralization was ever meant to be easy. And anybody that's in this industry for the right reasons, I think is, you know, going to see that. So, you know, I'm really excited to see how all of this plays out. You know, what I'm going to put us all on the spot here again, you know, because we, you know, Stephen brought up the net change limit, and it's like we need to talk about a budget first, right? Before we get to that, you know, what do we think is a fair budget? You know, I tend to always try to be conservative. You know, I would say at this point, you know, ADA's at $1. You know, it could go to X. You know, I wouldn't say spend more than 100 million, 150 million. ADA is, you know, that's even pushing it a little bit for me. You know, I'd say 100, 150 million ADA, you know, net change limit. You know, and I'm just spitballing numbers here to try to create like an entertaining conversation for everybody and get people thinking. But, you know, net change limit, if we're starting out at 150, I would say, 15 million. And that's even a little high. That's 10%. What do you guys think?
Well, it's an interesting time now that governance is launching. Actually, if the trajectory goes the way it's going now, and we are actually entering a bull market, it will be the ideal moment to actually spend money. But on the other hand, there's nothing easier than spending money, but it's extremely difficult to spend it wisely and sensible. So it's a really difficult balance, because it's very easy to spend money, and at the same time, it's probably the right time to spend money to have the biggest impact. As you mentioned before, things like being present at consensus and like Bitcoin conferences now with deep Bitcoin DeFi launching on Cardano soon. Those are things that we need to start thinking about, and yes, also spend money on. So it will be a tricky balance to see how to spend the money wisely, without splurging too much and draining the treasury, because we've seen it from other ecosystems that that's what tends to happen, and especially if participation in governance is too low, it's easy for a select few of people to start, let's say, well, I'm going to call it drain a treasury. It might not be the nicest way to put it, but yeah, it's I'm curious what the balance will be that the Cardano community will strike, because yeah, I'm curious. I don't know really a number to say, but at maximum, I wouldn't, as Nicholas said, I wouldn't want to spend more from the treasury this year than what's coming into the treasury. Especially the first year, I'd like to be conservative, but at the same time, like I said, the moment to start spending ADA would be now. If we're, you know, we don't have to spend all the budget in 5 to 10 years. I think adoption from governments and from companies, from the enterprises, it will be the next few years, I think, and that would be the time to spend the money wisely, I think.
I wanted to kind of add in one thing that kind of makes us unique, you know, looking at the difference between, you know, Bitcoin and Ethereum and, you know, Cardano. Like, we are making the bet in Cardano that spending more money is eventually going to bring more inflow of money or transactions in the future. And, you know, Bitcoin didn't really bet on that, you know? So it's like what we have to spend has to, you know, bring in more transactions or more money ultimately, or we were wrong in that bet, you know? But Nicholas, I didn't let you respond.
Is anyone hearing Nicholas?
I think Nicholas might have rugged. I can't hear him.
No.
I did see a little emoji from him though.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, my sometimes my fancy microphone dies on me. So what I was trying to say, and apologies for the short technical difficulties. For me, when I look at the future of Cardano, what is the most important thing, right? It's really that we reach the level of economic sustainability. What does that mean? That the level of transaction fees and the level of just transactions and on-chain traffic is able to subsidize the ever-increasing outflows from the reserves, right? The reserves of Cardano are diminishing. I think I saw that post yesterday from what's his name, from NMaker, not Patrick, but yeah, sorry, the name, I'm
Is
missing
it
the
Phil?
name now. No. One of those, one of those, one of the team members of NMaker. But yeah, sorry about that. But right, this economic sustainability of Cardano, this is really the #1 priority, because at the end of the day, if the reserves are depleted and there is no incentive for the stake pool operators to maintain the network anymore, and for delegators as well, right, it's going to be really difficult. So what we really need to work on is to enable these use cases on Cardano that ensure we reach this level, right? I mean, we still have time, I think 10 years or something, but this, we really need to focus on bringing in these use cases that, as you said, Peyton, right, bring also transactions to Cardano. So for me, right, while I would also say I'm usually more of a conservative type when it comes to budgets and spending, I think it's also crucial that we do spend money on onboarding and interesting use cases, build new capabilities that allow for future and potentially interesting onboarding use cases. So for me, the most important thing when it comes to the budgets and everything like that is really that we have as much ADA participating in the decision-making process that leads to these budgets, right? That we have more ADA registered to vote, that either register as a DREP themselves or that delegate to a DREP. Because at the end of the day, I think this is going to be the game changer. And right, if there is a compelling idea, a compelling plan on how to onboard, I don't know, the next 10 million people to Cardano, and people rally behind this idea, right? If maybe there is a new budget, that's the cool thing. The new constitution, if it's approved, will allow for multiple budgets. And if there's another brilliant use case that comes in, then the group, he, she, whoever, they can then rally people behind their cause and get this approved, and then we can do this. This is really what's gonna enable us as Cardano to tackle the future and to really be successful, even more successful than we have been, and we have been very successful, right? So it's this is something that really excites me. And coming back, we could, even if we see that the net change limit is not high enough and we need to spend more money, we could in theory also do a new net change limit info actions and increase that. If there is a use case, if there is a cause that would require that, it is possible to initiate a new net change limit. So what I'm just saying is that we need more community participation. And if there are really these great ideas, great things that we need to fund as a community, I think there is the possibility to do so. And yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm super excited.
I really like the call to action there at the end. You know, we do need more DREP participation, and you can become your own DREP today by registering some DREP keys, costs about 500 ADA. You can also delegate to a DREP. It's just like delegating to a stake pool operator, except you're not going to get, any returns back from it. You're doing it for the decentralization of Cardano. The more ADA that is delegated to DREPs, the more decentralized the network, is going to be. We had a big push in 2020 and 2021, around decentralization and delegating to SPOs. And, we have to have the same push with DREPs. You can become a DREP right now. You don't get anything for it, but you do need to delegate to a DREP at minimum. You can go to gov.tools. You can go to 1694.io and look at the DREP list there. There's a lot of them on there, a lot of great DREPs, some faces you've probably already seen before. So make sure you do that. If you guys have any questions, feel free to request speaker and come on up. You can also click the little comment section in the bottom right-hand corner. Post your questions there. We want to educate. If you guys have any questions about governance, there's a lot going on right now in Cardano, whether it's, your favorite project or, the hard fork that's happening today. We're happy to answer some questions. So post them down there. If you have any questions, over voice, feel free to request speaker. We are also doing a vote right now within the Âtrium community. We're going to be launching Diffusion soon. Diffusion's Cardano's first staking basket, and it allows you to delegate to over 50 different stake pools at the same time. And those 50 different stake pools are chosen by the community. And the way that you choose your favorite stake pools is you go to vote.atrium.io, and if you have ADA, you're allowed to vote. It's that simple. There's 5 different categories of SPOs to vote on. You go in there with your wallet, you connect your wallet, and you vote on your favorite SPOs. There is a way of voting essentially offline. You're just using your public key to vote and signing it without actually submitting a transaction, so you don't even have to spend anything if you don't want to. But we'd really appreciate that. If you voted on your favorite SPOs. And then we also have an incentivized testnet still going. It's the last one leading till mainnet. So, if you just go to alpha.atrium.io, we also have a step-by-step guide. Essentially, you can get in there, you can play around with the smart contracts that we've built, you can level up a profile NFT, and then you get an airdrop once mainnet comes around. And then you also get some cool unlocks to customize your profile that you can only get during testnet. So, sorry for the honking. I like to do little walk during the Twitter Spaces.
So going back to DREP participation, and more people need to delegate to DREPs to improve decentralization. Do you guys think that the DREP power currently is centralized? Because we have about 500 DREPs, I think. But most of them are quite small. So I think we have around somewhere between 20 and 30% of the largest DREPs have quite some influence now. So do you guys think that this will be a problem going forward, or should we be fine?
For me, I think it's definitely important to keep an eye on that. And therefore, right, it's also important that our explorers include this information and we can kind of see which DREPs have how much voting power. And yeah, as you said, there are a few DREPs that already amassed quite some voting power. But the thing that we need to consider, right, moving now into this new era of governance after the Plomin Hardfork, is that now we'll actually only after today will be the first time DREPs will vote on something that has an on-chain effect. So up until now, right, they could only vote on info actions, and you as a delegator, right, you just delegated your ADA to a DREP and we're like, okay, they can't do anything right now. Okay, I don't care what's going on, because DREPs, yeah, they're not yet fully there yet. They're not yet capable of voting on anything else, right? But now, after the Plomin Hardfork, DREPs will make decisions on things like parameter changes, on the budgets, on treasury withdrawals. So what I hope is that we will also see DREPs that currently have a bit of a lower delegation amount be really able to differentiate themselves from these, let's say, powerful DREPs, whatever, right? I really see it like that there is space for D-reps, I don't know, for a D-rep that is really proficient in marketing, or there's a D-rep that is really into finance and yeah, I don't know, conservative fiscal policy, things like that, right? So it's, I think D-reps after the hard fork will finally be able to really differentiate themselves from each other. And what's important then is that we have the tooling, or not just the tooling, but currently the metadata of D-reps is very much lacking, right? Because how should D-reps be able to differentiate themselves if no one knows that no one knows what they stand for, right? Currently in the metadata of D-reps, and sorry, it's a bit technical, but when you register as a D-rep, you can provide some metadata information about yourself. So what do you stand for? What are your qualifications? And some supporting materials. And currently it's not very detailed, but in the future, if we evolve this kind of standard, you could write there, what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, what is your number one priority? I don't know, things like that, which will allow people to also look up D-reps that really focus on this. Because right now, for example, I was thinking, wow, I want to find a D-rep from maybe even from a like from let's say Japan, or I want to no, that's fine actually. I want to find a D-rep from, I don't know, somewhere in like Ghana, for example, because they're a great Cardano is a great community in Ghana, and I want to find people there and delegate to them. But if the tooling does not allow me to search for people in Ghana, then yeah, even if I want to, I can't really delegate to them unless I know of this D-rep that's in Ghana. So this, right, this that's why metadata standards are so crucial, because it allows you to find these D-reps that align with your belief. So yeah, I hope, you know, once we get that, and once we're in this new governance era, D-reps will be able to really differentiate themselves from each other. But yeah.
Yeah, my thoughts are, I think it's something that we always have to look at, right? But I think that, sometimes we're a bit idealistic. We expect something to be a certain way, and it's just not going to end up that way, right? In my opinion, I view D-rep delegation is the same way that you view, stake pool operators, right? It's like a check and balance of the network. Imagine you have a blockchain that has proof of stake and proof of work at the same time, right? It's like multi-layer consensus. And the whole point of that is in case one part of the network is attacked, check and balance. And when stake pools first launched on Cardano, not too long, like 3 years ago, the network was a lot more centralized in the beginning than it is today. There was when Shelley launched, Bloom alone had over 450 million ADA staked to us. Do we have that today? We don't. What happened is that the ADA, we onboarded a bunch of people, and then that ADA found new great members of the community to go and delegate to give support to. And I think that you'll see the same thing with D-reps, right? And I think it's idealistic for us to just, imagine that we're going to have 2,000 different D-reps and all of the ADAs split evenly. I specifically, didn't say I was a D-rep earlier in this space, and it's because I'm trying to bring the stake, get people to delegate and not necessarily to me, right? And, you got to look at the people that have the most stake there. Those are the people that are showing up. Those are the people that have showed up, like the people that are onboarding people. And if we want, it to be more decentralized, what you need to do is you need to show up. You need to create your D-rep ID. You need to start making posts, start making blog posts, educational content, videos, build a better front end that guides people to the right D-reps, that guides people to, vote on decentralization. And, that's the only way, So that's kind of my opinion on it. Should we be worried about it right now? No, it's a brand new thing. And as Nicholas was saying, we haven't voted yet. We haven't seen, this guy that has a huge D-rep delegation make a decision that we don't agree with, right? And, if I'm a delegate and I see that guy made that decision, I'm going to, switch to somebody else that maybe I agree with more, because D-reps are supposed to be representing, their ADA holders ultimately. So that's my thoughts. I think it's, something that we need to analyze in the same way that we analyze block production. But, it's not the end of the world right now, is my thoughts. We just need to incentivize D-rep participation and delegation in the same way that we have with SPOs. And we're going to be in a much better spot 6 months from now.
Very well said, absolutely. And just to add on that, right, to put into perspective a bit with the numbers, because I'm also now just on AdaStat on the D-reps overview, and we currently have 740 D-reps and a live stake of, okay, we need to subtract the always abstain delegation, but it's roughly around 2.6 billion ADA that is delegated to D-reps. And that is even before they were able to make any decisions, right? So let's not forget about that. It's, of course, I want to see that 2.6 million. I want to see at least 10 billion more or get even as close to the amount of ADA that is delegated to stake pools. I think we will never reach that. Maybe if we have a new incentive scheme on Cardano, maybe then. But at least, right, constantly trying to get people to participate in governance. I think this is what everyone should do. Because at the end of the day, now with Plomin and even with Cheng, ADA as a token now has a whole different level of utility that comes with it. It's not just there anymore for the transaction fees and to pay for that, but it's also now our token that we govern the whole network with. So this is something that I think really needs to still, some people probably don't really realize that yet, but your ADA now, that's your voting power, right? So you can now directly participate. And we saw proposals in the past. And if we just look at like democracies in general, I know of an election here in my country, in Austria, where there was like 10 people made a difference, right? It's not a big country. We have only 10 million people living here. But in some elections, right, only maybe 100 or even 10 people made a difference. So even if you don't have that much ADA, you can make a difference. And if you build up, as Peyton said, a very strong D-rep presence, right? If you educate people, if you onboard people, if you have an agenda, if you can rally people behind your cause, it is possible to attract delegation. It's hard, don't get me wrong, right? I know it's very hard, but it is possible, right? And especially when it comes to governance.
And I think that really speaks to why a lot of us are in blockchain in the first place. Is, you look at the modern society or the jurisdiction that you're in, and you feel like, you can't have an impact. And, in a system that's, more fair, you could, or somebody could have an impact, right? And, where the D-rep delegation is now, if there's something that you believe Cardano should do, there has never been a better time, to start making these educational videos, to start, having an impact. Because as he mentioned, there's not even that much ADA delegated yet, right? And the difference now is that nobody's really paid to do it, like that's what makes it harder. And that's why I think that you even need to work, an extra step to get people to delegate, to get people to participate, because before everyone was paid to do it and now they're not. And that's why, almost every single one of these Twitter spaces that we've hosted over the past 3 months, I've said, hey, go delegate to a D-rep. I think that we all have to do that because, it's hard for people to live their lives and then also, stay up to date with, the hard forks that have came in the past few months and, everything that's going on. So, you need to tell people to delegate. You need to educate people, especially the people that you've onboarded to Cardano. A lot of, people listening to this space have brought in their friends or their family and, said, hey, get a little bit of ADA. That's what we're doing over here. Tell them what's going on. Tell them to participate. We do got some questions in the comment section. I'm going to take a look at those.
Yeah, I saw in the comments that Beatrice mentioned, Nicholas, that someone is building a D-rep Tinder. So to specifically find D-reps in your area. So, but I think then you would have to move to Africa somewhere to find a DREP from Africa, probably. But okay, so people are building. People are always building on Cardano, so it will definitely come. Then we also have a speaker, a new speaker on. So hi, welcome. I'm not sure how I need to pronounce your name. So, but if you have a question or a comment, feel free.
Hey, thanks for the time. Yeah, I just have a question. Let's say I'm interested in becoming a DREP. How can I actually follow the things I need to follow to know? Like, is there, in order to make a decision, is there any kind of congested information that DREPs get that they can read through to be informed about everything? Or what should I or can I follow to be informed and make the right decision?
That's a great question. Is there something, that is the one source of truth that you can follow? There isn't, and I don't think that you should, because that information could be compromised in some way, right? So to be the most informed in Cardano, and this is kind of the downside of being a DREP, right? If you don't know the info, people are going to ask, well, why are you a DREP? And then if you do know the info, you don't really get paid for it, right? So the way to stay up to date with all of this is just being online all the time, to be honest with you, right? It's being on Twitter, seeing the way other DREPs are responding to things, being in Twitter Space, watching podcasts. It's not an easy task, to be honest with you, to stay most informed, and there isn't, and I don't think there'll ever be, one central source of truth that we can all follow as DREPs to make the right decisions. What do you guys think, Nicholas, Stephen?
Wow, yeah, that's spot on, Peyton, right? The thing is, and I know it's super difficult, right? When you're not as privileged, for example, as me, right? I work for the Cardano Foundation. I have time to also keep informed about everything, but I know many, like it's a privilege, and I see that. And for me, right, I always try to get information from a few sources because, as Peyton said, we don't want just to rely on one source of truth that can be, I don't know, there can be some sort of spin and narrative that is being pushed there. So it's always good to try to find like alternative sources of information. For governance specifically, what I found to be really, really insightful, especially for someone that is not able to spend too much time on X and on the other channels in the working groups or the committees of Intersect, you can register for the weekly newsletter of Intersect, where they share a lot of information also just about the general governance space on Cardano. So really, this it's a great source, a great resource, a great resource that you can check out. And then also, as Peyton said, try to be in these conversations, right, on the Twitter spaces, like, I don't know, like the Âtrium space, or the Cardano over coffee, which is every weekday, and a lot of the other spaces that are going on. And I've actually recently tried out this feature. If you are a premium subscriber of X, you can ask Grok to give you a summary of what's currently being discussed on Cardano. And I tried it yesterday. It was actually quite accurate. Yeah, and then besides that, try to also find these groups, right? I think there are groups forming around DREPs. There's the DREP forum from Ben O'Hanlon. Shout out to Ben as well. He's always trying to push Cardano forwards. Really appreciate him. There's the, I think, DREP Collective, it's called. It's a Discord server. And naturally, right, I think we will see also DREPs work together a bit more to take the load off, right, of each other's shoulders. Because you cannot spend, if everyone spends all of their time just trying to keep up to date, it's a bit of a, I don't want to say waste of resources, because it's also important to have that. But I think naturally we'll see these kind of groups forming. Maybe even political parties, but I don't know how I feel about that.
And to add on to that, to the question, every governance action needs to have supporting documents and a rationale to explain what is being proposed, and any data or factual information that can help you to make a decision. So at least that's a starting point. That's at least you know what's it about, what they are proposing, and from there you can continue on and do research about what is being proposed, you know, the benefits and the downsides and things like that. And then exactly, form your opinion, and try to see what everyone else is thinking and listen to their rationale. So I think that's also important, to check out the governance proposals and really see what's being proposed. We have another speaker up here. Hey, welcome. Do you have a question or a comment?
Hi, I was just gonna say, with the whole Pei was mentioning, like, he's not sure if it'll ever be different, you know, like getting the governance information, you know, at a I guess at a good rate, like having your maybe like having your daily briefing of governance type information and stuff. And this is one of the things that I think AI agents can play a pretty big role in, actually. Now, you should never, you know, simply just put your trust in an AI agent without verifying, right? That information. But you could think of AI agents as like a means to kind of just build a following and then communicate things that are happening in governance, and then, you know, provide like the objective facts with links and resources to that information, so then people can get more informed about it, and then look at themselves. I think one of the biggest, you know, barriers to entry for people right now is like they understand, like, oh, okay, like we're managing the chain now, like it's our chain now. But the most people are not used to nor comfortable with having to make um decisions that hold so much gravity, which is why we have DREPs, which is fantastic, that are supposed to operate with their constituents. But still, even then, like, people kind of get paralyzed by, okay, I need someone to really explain this to me in a way that I understand it. You know, people have different learning styles, like whether they're visual, auditory, what have you. And so if we can use agents to kind of step up and fill that need, then I think you would get a lot more people participating in governance, right? You would have kind of these pseudo like AI agent influencers, right? That specifically dealt with things that related to governance and whatnot, and they could speak the language, they could speak at the level that people need them to, in order to better digest what's happening, and then you know, make more informed decisions for themselves.
When you brought that up, it kind of sparked an idea for me of, like, you know, going to a site to get my AI daily or my daily AI digest, and then like I'm getting it from the left AI and the right AI to try to make my balanced opinion in the morning as far as what I should vote on. Seawar, I think I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. Speaking of AI, like, how can we prevent AI from becoming a DREP? Has anybody thought about that? Do we want that? Yes or no?
Well, Decimalist, you actually happened to create an AI DREP, haven't you?
Yeah, so Talos, as far as I know, is the first AI agent that is a DREP. He has it right in his X profile, and I went and gathered all the gov.tools documentation, everything like that, and I'm gonna work on Talos and get all of that integrated so he knows how to use that programmatically, to post what he needs to. But yeah, even if you ask him, he knows that he is a DREP, and he has his own opinions about, you know, what he's all about. He obviously is a huge advocate for decentralization, and he's very interested in the advancement, the careful and thoughtful advancement of AI innovation in the blockchain space, as well as gaming. So those are kind of like his core principles. And yeah, anything else that will be, obviously will be published, you know, like you can go read, like, hey, this is what he stands for, this is what he's interested in, and everything. And then with the Talos token, what we're going to do is going to be a pretty cool experiment. We're basically going to, once we have that published, have everybody take a look at it, and then if there's ever Talos deviating and voting a certain way that is not in line with his core principles, obviously that's one way for us to like step in and be like, hey, let's propose a change to that, right? And then update his code base so that it's more strict to adhering to that if that ever were to happen. But also, like, if the community feels like he should advocate for other things or add, certain verbiage to his code base to for certain core principles and things like that that he's interested in as time evolves. So yeah, it's going to be really cool, I think, just watching him participate in Cardano governance.
Wow, I mean, AI agent DREPs, that's just a whole new world opening up for me. So it's going to be an interesting time, an interesting world we live in. Yeah, Peyton, Nicholas?
I wanted to say that, I think at the technical level, there really is no way to stop an AI from being a DREP. I mean, at the end of the day, you're just generating a set of keys, right? So when you're voting yes or no, anybody can hook up some code to that to vote yes or no. I did get a question from Beatrice, question for Big Pay. Do you believe that DREPs should get paid? This is a really good question, B. To be honest with you, I don't know the answer to it. It's something I have thought about a few times. And, I think that if we were living in an ideal world and we were starting Cardano from scratch again, and we had all of the software we have now, Shelley, Plutus, everything that we've built, and Voltaire, all shipping at the same time, to me, it makes sense that you would have incentivized DREP decentralization in the same way that you incentivized SPO decentralization. But, we don't live in that ideal world. What we've done is we've spent our budget on, incentivizing block production. And, as Nicholas brought up earlier in this call, we have to maintain that budget, right? We only have, at 10 years to maintain that budget. So should we start paying DREPs today? It doesn't really make sense to me, right? We've kind of spent that budget. I think that we have to, be a bit creative with this one. At Âtrium, we've been, we built this smart contract that allows you to mint profiles. These profiles are going to be attached to DREP keys. What we've been thinking about is trying to, use good UI and UX to get more participation instead of incentives, right? We don't have these incentives. I'm not going to vote yes on paying DREPs, right? So, what can we do? To me, I think we need to make becoming a DREP or delegating to a DREP and then consuming this information easy. And that's what we're going to do at Âtrium, to try to increase delegation. But should they get paid? I don't think so. Should they have gotten paid in the beginning if it was there? Probably. If this decentralization is important as the layer 1 blockchain, but maybe the social layer isn't as important. It's a complex topic and I don't have the answer to it, honestly. Nicholas.
I think you're spot on, right? When it comes to DREP compensation or incentivization, however you want to call it, right? It would have been ideal if it would have been part of the network of the current incentive scheme, right? Because then we would not need to now worry about that. But at the end of the day, I think it's also important that we, first of all, now really closely look at what's going to happen after Plomin. So how much work is it actually for DREPs to assess the governance actions? How many governance actions are there even, right? If there are only, I mean, up until now, we only had 7 governance actions where 1 was faulty. So it actually was just 6 governance actions since September. But of course, right, not all the governance action types were available. So we'll still see how many there will be. But if the amount of work is not that high, right? If it doesn't take that much effort to be a DREP, and I'm sure it will be, right? If you take your job serious and you do a lot of research, a lot of marketing as well, right? You need to promote yourself, you need to share your opinion, draft very sound rationales, things like that. It could become very extensive, but I think right now for us the most important thing is to closely monitor this, see that, and if there is really this need for DREP incentivization, I think there's definitely a room for a budget or for a treasury withdrawal that takes care of that, right? And I agree with you, Peyton, that I mean just giving out some ADA to DREPs right now is maybe not the most efficient and yeah, best idea. But then again, right, it's a very nuanced discussion, and I also understand this perspective, right, to play devil's advocate. If you cannot afford to be a DREP right now, right, and you don't have the privilege of having that much time, or I don't know, if you're just not able to, it's very hard to spend this time in governance as a DREP if you just can't afford it, right? If you instead need to work a normal job, if you need to yeah, make sure there's food on the table for your kids, for your family. I mean, at the end of the day, if there's no incentive, it also means that only those who are privileged can participate. Yeah, so it's important to keep an eye on that. And there's one question that I quickly want to address. Jenny was asking, there are a lot of DREPs that became inactive, and they don't know, or what does that mean for them and their delegators? So there's a very easy answer. If you as a DREP become inactive, and first of all, how do you become inactive? You become inactive if you do not vote on a governance action during the DREP activity period. And that period right now is 20 epochs. So if you as a DREP do not vote on a governance action in 20 epochs, you are considered to be inactive. And if you are inactive, all the voting power that is delegated to you is considered abstain vote. So that means for you as a delegator, your vote would then be considered in the abstain bucket. What that means basically is it lowers the amount of ADA that is required to reach an approval threshold for all the different governance actions. So it is important for DREPs to vote on governance actions. And just one more thing, as soon as you, if you are inactive, let's say you were, I don't know, you were not able to vote on a governance action and you became inactive, as soon as you vote again, you are considered to be active. So the best way to think about it is that you vote and then the timer starts. So and then you have 20 epochs where you are considered active. If you do not vote again in these 20 epochs, you're considered inactive and your voting power is considered to be abstain. I hope that helps.
That does help, Nicholas. I really appreciate all the information you've given out in the space. You've made it a really informative one so far. I wanted to add one final piece on that. You know, should DREPs be paid? And you know, what if we abstracted another layer out of there? If you think about it, Cardano, the blockchain, is not incentivizing stake pool operators. The Cardano blockchain is incentivizing delegates to stake pool operators. So maybe the question shouldn't be, should we pay DREPs? The question should be, should we pay DREP delegates, right? Because SPOs are just they're purely taking a fee from the people that delegate to them to make them the slot leader, right? So maybe we're asking the wrong question here, you know? I mean, at the end of the day, it's the same thing because you can just delegate to yourself. But, you know, should we incentivize DREP delegation? Not should we incentivize DREP participation? I think is a broader question that may be more important. Decimalist, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I pretty much agree with all of that. I thought long and hard like a while back about doing the DREP thing myself, but the reality is like I looked at it and I said, you know, well, it takes a lot of time and it would be something that I would want to be compensated for, like doing it, but at the same time, like I also feel like being compensated for it might not be like in the best interest of Cardano as a whole right now. Like, so then I thought, you know, and obviously biased decision, right? But I think there is an argument to be made that, you know, if you don't have the time, but it is something that you think is important and needs active participation, and you do have certain ideals that you want to make sure are, you know, thought about and voted for. and things like that, you could essentially use an agent in that use case too, right? You can just model it after yourself, put exactly what your values are, your beliefs, and then it's automated for you, right? It's like basically a little digital double of yourself that is doing governance on your behalf, and you don't have to spend a lot of that time doing the management of it where you feel like you would need to be compensated for such.
I'm also in the camp of not incentivizing DREPs with compensation at the beginning, because if you think about it, for stake pools, it's kind of like the same. When you start a new stake pool, at least if you're not an SPO from the start, if you start one now, before you get enough delegation and before you start making blocks, you have to put in the time, you have to put in the effort. And I think most stake pool operators, it's not their main job, so they also have to do it after their hours and put in the effort on top of their normal job. So it's kind of like the same situation with stake pools now. You have to put in the effort first and make it happen, and then hopefully at some point you get compensated for it by stake and by producing blocks. So I'm not a fan of well, I won't call it a handout, but yeah, I believe in the effort. I believe in the idea of putting in the effort first and then getting rewarded for it. I think that's the best way to get active participation that matters, and not just people looking to earn a buck and not really contribute meaningfully. So we have a new speaker up here, Gary. Welcome, Gary. Do you have a question or a comment?
Hey guys, yeah, just real quick. If you are delegated to a DREP, is there any way to see like if there's something important that you want to be voted on, like what the way that they're going to vote before that they vote on it, or is that just something you would have to follow their X forward to see if they're going to vote that way? In terms of like, if there's something really important, I'm just using Circle because everyone talks about that, but if that was something that was being voted on, is there a way to tell if your DREP is going to vote the way that you want them to before the vote? And if not, would you change your voting power to a different DREP?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, right now, what you can do is you can look at, as you said, the social media profile of the DREP and then get an understanding of what they are doing. And I think Tempo.vote also has this feature enabled. So if you don't know Tempo.vote, it's a great governance tool on Cardano where you can also easily register as a DREP and also delegate to DREPs. And they have a feature, I think it's called DREP discussion forum or something like that, where you then as a DREP have your own, I don't know, forum in a way, and where you can then communicate. But yeah, currently I think, and that's, and Gary, I think you're touching there a really, really sensitive subject, right? Is that as a delegator, if you're delegated to a DREP, it is probably important that you from time to time also check what your DREP is doing, especially right if they vote on some spicy governance actions or even a budget. I think, and maybe I'm just speaking of myself. If I'm a delegator to a DREP, I would probably want to see what's going on, if they're actually voting at all, and if they vote, what way do they provide a rationale, things like that. And currently, what I can also recommend to you is the tool called ryp.io. It's rip.io. It's built by Niels from Hazelpool. And there, for example, you can set up notifications every time your DREP votes. So you can get an email and Discord message, Telegram message, whatever form of info you need. I think you can even get an SMS if you want that, when you're then informed about the vote of the DREP. So at least you then know that, and then you can spend, I don't know, 2 minutes checking what is going on, how did he or she or they vote, right? And that's, I think, a super useful tool, because at the end of the day, we don't have so much time, and not everyone can spend reviewing how their DREP voted on every governance action. So yeah, I hope that helped a bit.
The way that we thought about that at Âtrium, sorry for interrupting you guys, you know, a couple different ways. You know, essentially people are going to have Âtrium profiles. You know, a DREP is going to have an Âtrium profile. You're going to see their past votes on there, right? You're going to be able to also say yes or no on an ongoing vote that the DREP hasn't voted on yet. That's the way that we've at least been thinking about it, is, you know, imagine you're on your DREP's profile because you got a notification. You log into the dashboard for the day, you see a notification pop up, a new vote is going on. So then you click your DREP's profile, you pull that profile up, he hasn't voted yet. We almost, you know, want to build like an upvoting and downvoting system for delegates only for that particular DREP, right? So when you're on their profile, you know, when the DREP is actually going to vote, they can see, oh, well, you know, over half of my delegates really don't like this one, right? So that's kind of how we've been thinking about it. But as far as seeing it before they vote, you know, you would almost have to have like a, you know, a centralized system, you know, that kind of marks the vote on chain to give the delegates some time to respond. And that may be a bit too convoluted due to the lack of, you know, voting participation in the first place. So
I think there's also, correct me if I'm wrong, Nicholas, but the way that the governance process works is there's a period that all members that need to vote, all parties that need to vote, can vote. And then there's one epoch time difference to allow delegators of that DREP to change their DREP delegation. So if I'm not wrong, it's possible to check your DREP, to check how your DREP has voted. And afterwards, you still have time to change your delegation to another DREP before, let's say, your vote is taken into account. But this is how I remember it. But is that correct, Nicholas?
It's almost correct. The thing is, though, right, there can be some kind of really, yeah, you can do quite some shenanigans when it comes to that, because the thing is, and now we again need to take a step back. Sorry about that. But how is the voting power calculated for DREPs, right? So at the beginning or end of each epoch, depends on how you want to see that, we transition, right? We transition from epoch n to epoch n+1. And in that time, so in the transition or before or after, I don't know exactly, but let's say during that time, a snapshot is taken of the current voting power that is associated to each stake credential. So let's say I have a wallet, I have it staked, let's say 100 ADA. So this 100 ADA is my voting power, and I have it delegated to a DREP. Okay. So assuming now, right, what you said, I can at all times during the epoch change my DREP delegation. So from the beginning to the end, I can switch around, and the change of my voting power is instantaneous. So if I'm delegated to, let's say, DREP Peyton, and I don't like what Peyton is doing, and I'm delegating then to, instead I want to delegate to the AI DREP, the Talos, I can do that, and the voting power would basically transition instantaneously, right? So Talos, then my stake credential is then pointing to Talos, not Talos, sorry. So that means, right, that it could happen that at the end of an epoch, really, really close to the end, all of a sudden my DREP, cheekily, he or she said that she would vote yes, but at the end she really quickly turns around and votes no. And then, you know, unfortunately, the no was enough to make that action not pass. The governance action lifetime has passed, and then I don't have the time anymore to change things. So there is a thing about once the threshold is met, right? If we meet the approval threshold, for example, for a treasury withdrawal, it's 67%. If that's met, and we also have the approval of the Constitutional Committee, then there is no way that that can be changed in the next epoch. So there is no time window where you can do that. But of course, what's important is that you just keep an eye on what's going on, right? And use tools like, I didn't know about Atrium, that it also allows that. And yeah, you use tools like Atrium and other governance tools that allow that to keep an eye on what's going on.
I'm speaking to the future, Nicholas. That's the way that we, plan on solving this. We're getting ready to launch mainnet, and we're launching profiles as well. And then, the DREP and governance edition is what's going to come, in the future after that.
Oh, that's perfect. That's great. Yeah, sorry for misunderstanding that. But then there was
No, it's okay.
yeah, there was one other question. Sorry to interrupt you, Peyton. Again, about this thing of becoming inactive, right? And what does that mean for the delegators as well, right? So even if the DREP becomes inactive, oh wait, let's take a step back again, right? So with Plomin, one thing is also important. Staking rewards, they continue to accrue. So if you're currently just delegated to a stake pool, but you don't have a DREP yet, you did not have the time, it's all good. Your staking rewards continue to be accumulating in your rewards account, and they can be, yeah, they're there. So they're never gone. They're not locked away. They're not diminishing. I mean, yeah. So you will continue to accrue your staking rewards. The only thing that happens after the Plomin Hardfork is that you must delegate to a DREP or to one of the predefined voting options, abstain or no confidence, to access these accrued staking rewards. So just being able to withdraw these staking rewards, you must delegate to a DREP. And now to the question of inactivity, even if your DREP is inactive, you can still withdraw your staking rewards. So even if the DREP for some reason becomes inactive, you can still withdraw your staking rewards, which is yeah, a good thing for the delegators. And it's something that apparently has not been specified anywhere in the documentations, in the educational materials, but it's very important to mention. So even if your DREP is inactive, you can still withdraw your staking rewards. Just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks, Nicholas. I appreciate all that info, and I appreciate you being here. We're going to go ahead and close it out for today. We host these every Wednesday at 11 a.m. EST, and the goal of these spaces is just to keep you guys up to date with news and have a quality discussion where we all learn something. Sometimes we'll be kind of spitballing ideas a little bit. We may not be completely correct when we were talking about what the budget should be earlier or what the net change should be. We're really just trying to get these ideas across so we can all start thinking about them, to come up with the right answer for the future. So if you guys want to come up as speaker next space, you have any important topics, feel free to shoot us a DM. Remember, 11 a.m. EST every Wednesday. We have great guests every week. And I wanted to say thank you to, Stephen, Decimalist, Nicholas, Gary, Seaware PC for all coming up here today. I think it's been an awesome space. Make sure you guys, share this with somebody. If you go back and listen through this, you're going to get the full update on governance. You're going to know about, an inactive DREP, everything you need to know. It's in this space. So share it. Thank you, guys.
Thanks to all our guests. And yeah, as Peyton said, see you next week, Wednesday. Bye.